Where, Caleb? Mark's voice cut through the music so sharply that half the people near the dock turned at once. Patricia dropped her drink. What do you mean, where is he? I was already scanning the water when I saw it, a small shape beneath the surface, just beyond the edge of the dock. Call 911, I shouted. Mark lunged toward the shoreline, but I reached Caleb first. I pulled him from the water, lowered him onto the dock, checked his airway and breathing, then started resuscitation. Jenny, do something, my mother screamed. That almost would have been funny if her grandson hadn't been lying motionless beneath my hands. An hour earlier, Patricia had introduced me to Mark's friends with a laugh. Jenny works at the hospital. She likes to make it sound complicated, but basically she's playing nurse. Mark had grinned, which makes her perfect for watching the kids today. I'd spent years correcting them. I work in emergency medicine. Mom's usual answer was always the same. Everybody in a hospital thinks they're important. Now nobody was laughing. Come on, Caleb, I said, keeping my movements controlled. Come on. Seconds stretched. Then Caleb coughed. Water spilled from his mouth as he dragged in a ragged breath. Mark dropped to his knees. Oh my God. Keep him still, I ordered. The ambulance is coming. By the time the paramedics reached us, Caleb was breathing on his own. One of them crouched beside me. How long submerged? Unknown, likely under 2 minutes from last confirmed sighting. Initially unresponsive, no effective respirations. Resuscitation started immediately. Spontaneous breathing returned before your arrival. The paramedic looked up at me. You medical? Before I could answer, Patricia rushed in. Thank God Jenny works around nurses. I turned toward her. Even now. After watching me pull her grandson from the water and get him breathing, she was still rewriting who I was. Caleb was loaded into the ambulance, and Mark insisted the family follow to the hospital. I climbed into Patricia's car without arguing. As the ambulance lights flashed ahead of us, one thought stayed with me. How long could my family keep calling me the babysitter when we were heading straight toward a hospital where people knew exactly who I was? The ride to the hospital was almost silent until my mother finally said, You did good back there. I looked over at her. Then she added, But don't start making this about your job. There it was. Caleb had barely been taken from the lake, and somehow she was already trying to control what the moment meant. About my job, I asked. Patricia kept her eyes on the road. You know what I mean. Mark's terrified. This isn't the time to start proving something. I stared at her. I had spent years hearing versions of that sentence. When I got into medical school, Mom told relatives I was studying hospital stuff. During residency, she introduced me as someone who was still training to be some kind of nurse. Once, after she said it in front of half our extended family, I pulled her aside. Mom, I'm a physician. She rolled her eyes. You don't need to make everything sound so important, Jenny. Mark never had that problem. His job title was always announced correctly. His promotions became family news. His achievements were repeated at dinners before he even arrived. Mine became hospital work. The strange part was that whenever someone had chest pain, a strange rash, a medication question, or a child with a fever, everyone suddenly remembered I existed. Then the crisis passed, and I went right back to playing nurse. By the time we reached the hospital, I was tired of explaining myself. In the waiting room, Patricia sat beside me. Why did you introduce me as the babysitter today? I asked quietly. She looked genuinely annoyed. You were watching the children. That's not what I asked. Oh, Jenny, you make everything a battle. You told people I play nurse. It was a joke. You've been making that joke for years. Before she could answer, Mark walked over. Is Caleb going to be okay? I haven't examined him here, I said. I don't know what his oxygen levels are, whether he aspirated significantly, or what they're seeing inside. Mark frowned. So you don't actually know. Patricia gave me that familiar look. See? I reached into my bag, pulled out my hospital ID, looked at it for 1 second, then placed it face down on my lap. By the time the rest of the family reached the hospital, the story had already changed. "Jenny, I saw what you did out there," my cousin Laura said as she hurried into the waiting room. "You knew exactly what to do." One of Mark's friends nodded. Even the paramedics were listening to her. She gave them all that medical information like she'd done it 100 times. Patricia folded her arms. "She's around medical people all day. You pick things up." Normally, someone would have laughed. Nobody did. Laura looked directly at me. "Jenny, what exactly do you do at the hospital?" I opened my mouth. "She works in emergency care," Patricia answered. I turned slowly toward her. Even now, she couldn't say it. Mark rubbed both hands over his face. "Can we please stop talking about Jenny's career? My son is back there." That ended the conversation. A few minutes later, the ER doors opened. A nurse stepped into the waiting room. "Parents of Caleb Jenkins." Mark shot to his feet. "That's me." The nurse approached and then saw me. Her expression shifted. Recognition. "Jen." I gave her a small shake of my head. This wasn't the moment. She caught herself and turned back to Mark. "Caleb is stable. He's breathing well, but we're keeping him under observation. After a submersion event, we need to watch for respiratory complications." Mark's shoulders dropped. "Stable?" "Yes." He covered his face for a second, and Mom wrapped both arms around him. "Thank God," she whispered. Then Patricia looked at me. "See, the doctors handled it." I held her gaze. The treatment started at the lake. The waiting room went quiet. Patricia's arms fell from Mark's shoulders. "Jenny, don't do that." "Do what?" "Try to take credit for what happened." I stared at her for a moment, then sat down. There was nothing left to argue about. And apparently, I wouldn't have to. A voice suddenly carried across the waiting room. "Dr. Jenkins." I looked up. Dr. Samuel Hayes was walking across the waiting room in a white coat, his hospital badge clipped at his chest. My mother glanced around, as if he had to be speaking to someone else. He stopped directly in front of me. "Dr. Jenkins," he said, "why are you sitting out here?" Nobody spoke. I stood. "The pediatric submersion case that just came in is my nephew." Hayes's expression changed immediately. "Caleb Jenkins." "Yes." He looked toward Mark. "Then you were the physician at the scene." Mark's head snapped toward me. Hayes continued. "EMS reported immediate resuscitation before they arrived. That early intervention mattered enormously." I could feel everyone watching me now. The paramedic at the lake. The nurse recognizing me. The questions I refused to guess at. Every clue my family had ignored was suddenly sitting in the same waiting room. Mom's eyes dropped toward my bag. My hospital ID had shifted partly into view. R. Jenkins, MD. Emergency medicine. She stared at it, then at me. "Doctor." Dr. Hayes frowned slightly, clearly confused by her tone. Mark stepped closer. "Wait, Jenny works here as an actual doctor." Hayes looked from Mark to me. "Yes, Dr. Jenkins is an emergency physician. We've worked together professionally." Nobody laughed. Laura slowly looked at Patricia. One of Mark's friends glanced down at the floor. Mom's face went completely still. Less than 2 hours earlier, she had stood beside that lake and introduced me as the babysitter who played nurse. Then the child I was supposedly babysitting nearly drowned. And the person she had mocked had been the one who kept him alive until the ambulance arrived. I didn't need to explain any of it. Dr. Hayes had done that without even realizing there was something to expose. Patricia opened her mouth. "Jenny, I didn't mean." The ER doors swung open. A physician stepped into the waiting room. Family of Caleb Jenkins. Every one of us turned. Mark reached the doctor first. I'm his father. Is he okay? He's stable, the physician said. He's responding well, but we're keeping him under observation. Mark exhaled so hard his shoulders dropped. Then the doctor added, what happened before the ambulance arrived was extremely important. Immediate intervention after a submersion can make a significant difference. Mark looked at me. This time, there was no joke waiting behind his expression. You knew exactly what to do. Yes, because you're actually an ER doctor. I almost laughed at the word asterisk actually. Yes, Mark. He stared at me. Since when? Since I finished residency and became an attending physician. Mom stepped forward. Well, you never explained it like that. I turned toward her. There were relatives all around us, but for once I did lower my voice to protect her from embarrassment. I did explain it. Jenny, I told you I went to medical school. I told you I was doing an emergency medicine residency. I told you when I became board certified. Patricia shook her head. You always used all those titles. Mom, I once said the exact words. I'm a physician. She stopped. I remembered the conversation perfectly. So did she. And what did you tell me? Patricia said nothing. You told me I cared too much about titles. Laura shifted beside us. I remember that, she said quietly. Another relative nodded. Nobody piled on. Nobody needed to. The silence was worse. Mark lowered himself into a chair and stared at the floor. I called you a babysitter today. You did. And I've been making that playing nurse joke for years. Yes. He rubbed both hands over his face. Then he looked at me. You saved my son. I helped him until the ambulance arrived. No, his voice cracked. Jenny, you saved my son. I didn't argue with him. But I also didn't let gratitude erase everything that had happened before the lake. Later, after Caleb had been admitted for observation, and most of the family had gone home, Mark found me near the elevators. I'm sorry, he said. I nodded, thank you. He seemed surprised. I didn't immediately tell him everything was fine. Then I said, but this can't go back to normal. What do you mean? You don't get to disrespect what I do for years, and then suddenly value it because you needed it. His eyes dropped. And family invitations aren't automatic babysitting assignments anymore. If you need me to watch Caleb, ask me. I might say yes. I might say no. Mark nodded slowly. That's fair. Caleb recovered without the outcome we had all feared, and after that day, something else changed too. Mom lost the ability to define me for everyone else. The playing nurse joke disappeared. Nobody repeated it because now everyone understood what it had really been. Not harmless teasing, but a way of making me smaller. A few months later, we were at another family gathering when Patricia introduced me to someone I hadn't met. This is my daughter Jenny, she said. She works at the hospital. For a second, the old version of me almost let it pass. Then I smiled and extended my hand. Dr. Jenny Jenkins, emergency medicine. Mom looked at me. Mark looked at Mom. Nobody laughed. Nobody called me dramatic. And Patricia didn't correct me. My relationship with Mark improved slowly after that, not because he suddenly treated me like a hero, but because he finally started treating me like an adult. If he needed something, he asked instead of assuming. If someone mentioned my career, he stopped turning it into a punchline. Mom never became comfortable with me correcting her, but eventually, that stopped mattering. Dr. Hayes calling me doctor in that waiting room didn't make me a physician. My medical degree did. My residency did. My board certification did. The years I spent treating patients did. That moment simply forced my family to acknowledge what I had been telling them all along. For years, my mother introduced me as the babysitter who was playing nurse. After the day I saved her grandson, and the ER chief called me doctor in front of everyone, she never made that joke again.